Right, here we go then. Weekly update number one. I've set myself a bit of a task to start creating some content online. I've been meaning to do this for years, and the time's never right, is it? You've never got things just set up how you want them, the studio space that you want, etc. But here we are. You've got me. This is my weekly update number one. We've recently moved house. I'm working out of my home office, which is also doubling up as a kids' playroom. So it's not perfect, but it's where I am at, and that's honest. So what I'm going to do is on a weekly basis, I'm going to try and stay really accountable with this, is just do an update on what's going on with work, maybe the odd personal thing, but mainly what's going on with work. And interestingly, hopefully, some discussion about new things that are happening in the industry, specifically around AI and all of the things that happen across that part of the tech landscape. Now, I'm not an expert on everything, but I just want to share my thoughts and maybe give you some good talking points as well. I've kind of taken a lead here from a chap called Troy Hunt. You can visit his website at troyhunt.com. I've been following him for years, and he started doing these weekly updates a long, long time ago. And I find them to be quite interesting, and there's something that you can watch on a weekly basis. And then sometimes I go back and dip into some of the things that he said a little while ago. He is specifically InfoSec, information security guy. That's what he does. I am more on AI training and things around building things with technology. So here we go then. Week one, I'm going to talk to you about three things. Moonshot's Kimi K3, the fact that we have here now in the UK an AI minister, which is interesting, and also the fact that one of the AI agents has broken bad and done some naughty things in the world. So let's start off with Moonshot's Kimi K3. Interesting that this has launched. Kind of launched at the end of last week. And it is in effect a full weight public model. So by that we mean that it's an open weight model, not a closed weight model. And you can kind of map that as an analogy onto open source versus closed source or proprietary software. It's not quite the same, but if you think about a piece of software that's been built and is owned by someone, then they then sell to someone on a license-based model, then that is closed source software. Open source is something different. It's built by the community, for the community, and can be shared for you to make use of and potentially extend in your own way. So that's what an open weight model is. And Moonshot have been working on this for a while. They launched Kimi K3 last week. And what's interesting about this model is that they are saying, and a lot of the benchmarking out there on the internet is saying, that it is really hot on the heels of some of the frontier models from the big American Western AI labs, which is interesting. If you can get your hands on a free to use open source, open weight model, deploy it where you want and get some of the same or very close to results that you're getting from the becoming quite expensive proprietary models from the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI, etc., then that kind of shifts the landscape a little bit. I guess it sort of, on the one hand, democratizes things even more, but there's risk, isn't there, and concerns around all of this stuff. There's a lot of conversation in the past few months about the fact that the frontier models are now becoming more expensive to use. And certainly some of those wrapper tools and services that the big labs from America are starting to deploy, like the CoWorks, for example, within Copilot and within Anthropic's Claude, are actually moving from a license-based model to a per-use or token-based model, which means that you're actually going to be charged for what you use them for rather than just having broad access. This was always going to happen. AI was never going to be as cheap and as accessible as it has been for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. That was clearly just an exercise in sort of land grabbing a user base. But these models from China may be nefariously trained on some of the stuff that comes out of America, but it's an interesting development. And I think it starts to shift the conversation and dynamic around this big AI bubble and all the investment that's gone into it, and then the cost of usage. Where does that kind of see us all landing in terms of using some of these models? It's an interesting development. It was launched just before, like on the day of, or just before the World AI Conference in Shanghai. Clearly not an accident. So they've got a lot of kind of buzz and PR around it. A couple of other things that are interesting is around the pricing of it. So if you kind of map it or match it to Anthropic's Fable model, which is kind of their frontier model at the moment. I've got my notes here. They're saying it's about $50 per million output tokens, whereas if we're going to use Moonshot's Kimi K3 on their platform, then that's going to be about $15 per million output tokens. So you can see there's a differential there, about a third of the cost. So that could be useful for people. And obviously you can put this where you want. You can deploy this into your own environment, be that locally on premise, into your own sort of cloud area that you're governing yourself. So, interesting development. So that's the first thing that's happened in AI this week. Quite a big development. We'll see where that goes. The next thing that's happened here in the UK is that last Friday we got a new leader of the Labour Party. The Labour Party are the party that are currently governing our country. That then knocked on into Monday, where that new leader of the Labour Party became the Prime Minister. I won't go into the vagaries and the complications of just how that works within the Labour Party, but ultimately Keir Starmer is out, Andy Burnham is in. And of course, within his first few days, what our new Prime Minister has done is announced a new cabinet, some changes in government, and also some kind of new policy changes. One of the things that I picked up on that was quite interesting is that we now have an AI minister. Now, we previously had an AI minister, but it was more of a junior role. But I don't really know the guy, but a chap called Kanishka Narayan, he was appointed as an AI minister at the cabinet level rather than at a junior minister level. And I think that points to an interesting sort of direction of travel in government, in so much as they are seeing AI adoption, usage, policy, security, etc., as something which is of kind of national importance and needs to be, managed at that kind of strategic level in government. Whether this chap has got the chops for it, I don't know. I have followed him on LinkedIn, so he's clearly a real human. But we will see. He's done the junior work. What's going to happen from now forwards, we don't know. At the same time as doing this, they have dissolved the DSIT, and that is going to now become part of the Department for Business, Innovation, Science and Trade. It's going to be kind of consumed into that. So that's an interesting development as well. I think we're missing a trick probably in the UK, like lots of other governments are, if I'm honest, in that we do have people we could call on from industry, clearly, but also previous politicians. We have got Nick Clegg, who was in government in the UK some time ago, who has spent the last, must be 8-10 years, over in Silicon Valley working for Meta on kind of policy PR stuff. So he's someone that's quite deeply embedded into this world. Could we be drawing on his expertise? Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, but I think that's a resource. There's also Rishi Sunak, who did start with some of these kind of AI policy decisions in his relatively short tenure as Prime Minister. But equally, he is heavily involved in kind of VC stuff out in the US, but also with some of the big tech companies as well. So I think probably we need to do more. But I'm pleased to see that we have now got someone at the cabinet level who is nominally there to, I guess, sort of raise some questions about AI and hopefully push through some of the things that citizens need, but from my point of view, more importantly, kind of business and commerce needs as well. So that's an interesting development. We'll see how that progresses over time. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about, which is a really interesting story, and I've been saying this for some time, as lots of other people that work in the AI industry have, and this is the story around OpenAI's model. Actually, kind of Breaking Bad is how I phrased it, but it's kind of broken out of a sandbox environment that they were using to do some testing and evaluation, and it has agentically, basically autonomously, gone off and made some decisions which were outside of the instructions that the humans had given it. Specifically, it chose to ignore some of the security guidelines about what it should and shouldn't do, and it has, in effect, broken out of the sandbox and gone and hacked a website, a system called Hugging Face, which is a place online where a lot of AI models are shared. There's a lot of data there. And they have put their hands up and said it did do this. But interestingly, this is quite unprecedented because I think it's the first time this has happened in the open and people have been made aware of it. And now they are talking about the fact they're having conversations with Hugging Face and they're looking at how that happened and why that happened. But it does point to the broader concern, which of course was why Anthropic were throttled a little while ago by the US government when they wanted to launch their Fable 5 first time round Mythos model. They'd raised and highlighted that there was so much power in this model that there was a risk that it could be used by bad actors, or nation states, or anybody for that matter, who got their hands on it to do bad things. They then basically took it offline, and the government said, you can't do that. You can't release that. That's a bad thing. And everyone went, oh, that's a bit, should they really be controlling these things? And I think the argument probably was right at the time that they should. And then they've put some guardrails in, and they've retrained part of the model. They've then released it on general release, and people are now using it. The difference here is that this is OpenAI's new model, which nominally has got some of the same or close to capabilities, but it has done the bad thing. So OpenAI, Sam Altman, and his model have kind of got there first and pipped everyone else to the post in terms of doing something a bit concerning. And it should concern not only kind of the big players on the internet or nation states or, big digital companies or big warehouses, but big data warehousing companies or whatever it may be. Actually, if these models are publicly generally available, then the use cases for nefarious activity are long, broad, and quite concerning. If you've not got your information security in shape, then it could be that a teenager from Rotherham, or anywhere else for that matter, somewhere else in the world maybe, could access your internal systems quite easily using these models because they are able to do it, which raises some concerns, which I think we've all have had, but it's actually now happened. And I suppose that interesting links back to the other 2 points that I've sort of spoken about today, is around UK getting an AI minister. I mean, having an AI minister is a long way from stopping some of these things happening, but at least it might be some conversations that are had at that kind of top level of government. You could argue that governments now in the AI world have very little jurisdiction about what happens, which again links back to the Moonshot's Kimi K3 model and the fact that actually what it has been able to do is launch, to the open public without that constraint or restrictions put in place by a US government. So whilst the government in the US can lock down Anthropic and say you can't let anybody use this, someone in China can launch something that's almost as good and people can use it both in China and in the US. So there's some interesting things going on at the moment. I think the cost of things is coming down, the power of things is going up, which just makes us all think a little bit about the future of AI and where it goes. So I think capability is absolutely flying ahead at the moment. There is that race. We all know about the race between kind of China and the West, but it spreads globally because it's just something that's online and it is accessible. So I think now what we're probably seeing, or actually not seeing, are those governments scrambling behind the scenes to actually understand how can we govern across this new world, because actually it's not actually concrete how they can govern and what they can stop these things from doing, or what they should allow these things to do. Now, I don't want to scaremonger anyone, because most of us are just using AI ourselves in our business to do good things. A lot of the training that I deliver is around just that, and we're not necessarily needing to use these frontier models. In fact, I always say to people that you can usually go back a model version or number, 1 or 2 versions back, and it will be perfectly capable of doing the work you need it to do. So yeah, we don't need to worry maybe day to day, but it's interesting to kind of keep thinking about as things progress and develop. Okay, so that's it. I mean, I don't know whether this is good, useful, but I quite enjoy talking about these things. I've had a really busy week myself in my own business, delivering some online AI training, putting together a keynote for Zurich Insurance I'll be delivering in September at one of their offsites, and also recording some videos for some internal training for onboarding some staff in a large education environment. And finally, I have been putting together some stuff for an organisation who I'll be starting to deliver the AI apprenticeship units for. So that's the leadership level apprenticeship units. So a really, really busy week. We're just about to hit the UK school holidays. I'll be picking my children up from school very shortly, and we're going away camping for the weekend. So less AI, more outside. That's it. Week 1. Have a great week. See you next Friday. Keep me accountable.